Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show, and welcome to Walk on Wednesday. Walk on Wednesday is the day of the week where we invite people that we think are cool onto the show. We pick their brain, ask them about their spiritual journey, and today we have a good friend of mine who it feels like I've known you for years, but this probably hasn't been years. This is Fabio from Turin, also known as Torino, Italy. He's one of the Italians. We got a crew of Italians here today, and you got your Italian people showed up to support you. How are you, Fabio?
How are you? I'm great.
Fabio owns a really cool shop in Torino called
Hannibalstore. Yep.
Hannibalstore. And they just sell a bunch of, I don't know. What do you sell?
Just cool streetwear stuff, you know.
Cool streetwear stuff. He's a cool streetwear guy,
Yeah.
but he's an old hardcore guy from the old Italian hardcore scene. And
Yep.
what was the name? And he was a singer of a band.
Yep.
What was your band?
The first band was called Absence. The second band is called Destroy Bad One.
And they were a big vegan straight edge band in Italy and all over
We were
Europe.
like the first vegan straight edge band, you know, in the country. So we toured a lot, and you know, we did a lot of stuff, and yeah, we toured Japan, and
Yeah, influential guy. And I had the good. I think we sort of always knew of each other, just from the music scene, although we never hung out. And then one day, you signed up for Pilgrimage. Was that it?
Yeah.
Is that how we met?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uh,
I'll tell you what happened.
Well, you always had Krishna in your life a little bit.
Yeah, because like, you know, I got into hardcore when I was like 16 years old, and I was living close to Carson City, you know, in Nevada. And, you know, around that time, you know, if you listen to hardcore, you had to be aware of like, you know, the whole Krishna core movement, right? So, you know, I started playing music, you know, soon after that. And, you know, we toured with a lot of people and a lot of bands, and like a lot of individuals back then, you know, seemed to be into Krishna consciousness. And, you know, it's funny if you look back, you know, every single picture, you know, when I'm like 16, 17, I'm like wearing beads, you know, and it was like a thing, you know, back in the day, you know, like, it's not that I had a deep understanding of the philosophy. It was just like, you know, just look cool. Right. But, you know, that's how a simple like teenage mind works. You know, you find someone that like, you know, looks cool, sounds cool, you kind of want to be like them, you know.
Sure.
And your influence was like, you know, huge, you know, in the hardcore scene. And, you know, what happened, I was always like very fascinated, you know, by the whole Krishna thing. But, you know, you have to understand, I was raised in Italy, you know, and I went to like, you know, this very crazy like Roman Catholic school, you know.
I've heard Roman Catholic schools are really strict in Italy. Is that true?
Well, back in the day, it was kind of rough. It wasn't fun, you know. Like I remember, like, you know, parents, you know, telling teachers like, okay, if the kid doesn't behave good, beat him up, right? And that's what happened.
In school.
That's what happened. You know, every single day, you know, kids would get beat up, you know, by nuns and priests, you know, to a point of bleeding, you know.
Wow.
And I was doing pretty good, you know, so I wasn't, you know, getting that bad, you know, but, you know, like people that I'm friends with, to this day, they had it rough, right?
It
So,
makes you not love God.
you know what? Like growing up, the simplistic formula of like, no gods, no masters, from like the punk hardcore scene, made much more sense than like, the kind of God that I got to know, when I grew up, because like we had no diversity, we had no cultural diversity, right? So it was just like church, Roman Catholic, violence. I'm like, I don't want, I don't want anything to do with that, right? So
And then Krishna somehow danced into your life.
Totally. Yeah. It's always been around, the tilak and the beads and the 108 symbolism and all that. So what happened, like I started my clothing company to push like, veganism, animal rights, a sober lifestyle. And it was like very successful, very cool. So what happened was, like about 10 years ago, me and the mother of my child, we broke up, and, she's from Finland. So she decided to move back to Finland with the baby. And I was devastated, like I didn't know what to do with it. Because like, obviously, I grew up in this very traditional Italian family, and, the language barrier and the distance, and like, it was just crazy. I was like in a very dark place, and I was like, man, like I was depressed, I didn't know what to do. And I guess I don't know how, I can't even remember. Like I ended up sitting on this plane, going to India with you, and that was crazy. What a crazy, powerful, life-changing experience that was. Yeah. We're talking like 2012, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We've been connected that long, and you've never missed an episode of the show, I don't think.
Never.
Ever. It's out there, othering it up out there. There's one of the others. Was there one thing in particular, or was it the whole Sangha, the whole group on the pilgrimage that sort of like started shifting your perspective, or did you have a moment?
Yeah. Up until that point, like I was, like I've been, I had been trying to live, this very cool, clean lifestyle, and, I was very successful with my life, materially, But again, like, as I was walking through, we're walking in Vrindavan, and I remember like, watching these like, can we say poor people, or like, this, beggars on the street, were like
Destitute sometimes.
Yeah. With pretty much nothing, they seem to have, this very like peaceful face and this like beautiful, they seem to have like a warm home, like in their heart, right? Like a shelter in their heart. At least, that's what I, perceived. And as I was walking, I was like, man, like I own 3 houses, but I have no home right now, like, and that's something like, and I was like, okay, and for 1 second, I learned, or I tried, to put the I, me, and mine like out of the center.
Yeah.
And my life drastically changed for the better, and
wow.
Yeah, the high I got from the first trip, like it lasted for like 2 years.
Wow.
Gotta get
That
back.
is yeah. And I know, because I've like stayed in contact with you since then and visited you since then, and it's quite amazing. Kaustubha, it's amazing how people can have stuff, and it's almost like culture pushes you to get stuff. If you just get stuff, everything will be okay. Have you had that experience, Kaustubha, also when you see someone in Vrindavan with such little stuff, yet they have some deeper connection? Huh? It's such a faith builder.
Totally.
It is. That person, Sridhar, that we know, the simple villager in Vrindavan, we go visit him all the time. And his family just basically lives in it's not much of a house, just out in the fields. And they just pick flowers and make garlands that they bring to the temples every day. And really, he dresses kind of in rags,
Kind of in rags.
But the warmth and the happiness in that family is just something,
Yeah, Fabio, we didn't want to share this, but this is an intervention. We're all here, all of us here on Zoom. We want you to give up everything and become a flower salesman in
Well,
Vrindavan.
that's the thing, like, of course, I guess, when you're like new to Bhakti, that's like the first reaction you get, That's what you want to do. Like, what am I doing with my life? But no, like I've been trying to learn how to surf, like Raghunath Swami says, like surf through the waves of life, and
Yeah.
I've been trying to like, inspire, the people I work with and inspire the kids, that we, work with, and use a language they can understand, because I think you were very, very smart, when I met you the first time in India. You used this like beautiful, sweet language, to talk about, the Leelas and the pastimes of Krishna. But it wasn't like in a dogmatic way. It wasn't like in a preach. It was just a very sharp way to present things. And it worked. You spoke my language and it worked, And sometimes, I have a hard time, going to like random temples and like, listen to lectures. Because like sometimes, the language they use is just not what I can relate to,
We're from the same posse, you and me, Fabio.
I guess so, yeah.
It's another interesting point is that you can be a vegan and you can be straight edge and you can, be into, clean living, but you can still not be happy also.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like ethics itself make you happy, or even sometimes living a clean, healthy life will necessarily make you happy. There has to be that feeling of I'm part of something bigger and I want to give back. So anyway, I just want to say I'm happy you're here, and I'm happy, even though I don't see you on Zoom, I know you're out there, floating around in the other world, and it's great. And I'm happy to have you as a friend, and I'm looking forward to. Are you going on pilgrimage in November?
Oh yes, I hope so. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I hope to see you in Italy before then. And thanks for your popping in. And how can people follow you at your Hannibal store? What's your
Instagram Hannibal store, or
Hannibal
Fabio Raffaelli on Instagram. That's my private.
Okay, you know what? Put it up on the message board right now.
Sure.
We're gonna follow you around if you don't mind.
No worries.
Thanks, Prabhu.
Thank you, Fabio.
Ciao. I love hearing people's story, Kaustubha.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful,
Well,
especially like sometimes it's a thing though. People have Krishna sometimes in their back pocket for years, and then all of a sudden there's something happens, and
Well, I was thinking, I think I saw. Were you all together in Haridwar?
me and Fabio,
Yeah.
yeah, we were in Haridwar.
Doing kirtan in the streets in Haridwar?
Yeah, that'll do it too.
Well, we're about to go to Haridwar right now.
Yeah, what you got? Oh yeah.
Here's the
I was like,
stream of
well, we
Bhagavatam.
are? Awesome. I love Haridwar. I mean, in the story, in the book.
That's where we are. That's where Vidura is with Maitreya in Haridwar. That's the very same place. Imagine thousands and thousands of years before you guys are doing your Harinam there in the streets. Vidura and Maitreya are right there.
Well, they have the word kirtan means to sing, and sankirtan, which we hear sometimes means we sing together, which is like group prayer. But this Nagar Sankirtan, where you're actually going into the streets and chanting. See, it's one thing to chant like in a yoga studio and everyone's like, okay, we're into yoga. Okay, we're into kirtan. Krishna Das does kirtan. That's cool. It's another thing when you take that same kirtan and hit the streets, you really throw your ego out there. We're like, we're just going to sing here. And something magical melts your heart. Now, I will say in the West, it's a little different because in the West, people are like, what the hell is going on here? But in India,
it's a variety. You get a variety.
You get a variety.
There's definitely a lot of that.
You get the guys dancing with you and you're dancing there.
Like it.
Yeah. But it's definitely sort of like a peculiar thing.
Yeah.
Or a cultural thing, or it's a different thing. But in India, it's like part of their like roots. And they see, especially in holy cities, they see a bunch of Italians and Americans and Europeans singing and chanting mantras. They lose their mind. They lose their mind, and it's sort of like it cracks your heart open, and it still takes a little bit of an ego shed to get out there in public, but it's very, hey, that's where all my pain lives, truthfully, in the material world. It lives in my ego. So it's very powerful. So I think he experienced that. I experience that every time I do kirtan in the streets. It's just like it's a very, very natural state of being, is calling out and being aloof to public opinion and just connected with Krishna.
You know, I get to do it, you know, practically. I have the opportunity to do it every day in New York, you know. With Bhakti Louis, we go out there, we chant in the streets together, right?
That's why Bhakti Louis is so pure.
It
He's
is.
just chanting in the streets all the day, this guy.
Yeah.
You got to bring Bhakti Louis back here. Let's get Bhakti Louis for a walk on Wednesday. We haven't
Definitely.
heard from him in a while.
Most definitely. And Bhakti-yoga dogs, his dogs. We need
Those
to
are
meet
his
them.
dogs, aren't they?
Yeah,
Okay.
we need to actually meet those dogs, learn their names, find
Okay.
out more about them.
Yeah,
I know
Matt,
you're a
we're-
cat guy, but you
there
know,
are dogs out there also.
yeah, open up your heart a little bit to the dogs out there.
To the dog love.
That's right.
All right. All right, so let's dive into the Srimad Bhagavatam. Here we go
Okay.
with our secret mantras. Narayanam namaskritya, naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tadujayam mudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead, Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnanatimarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I have
Right.
respectful obeisances to my spiritual masters who have opened my eyes, which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance with the ointment of knowledge. You know, I got caught up in that prayer because I was really like, you know, sometimes you read these
feeling it?
prayers over and over and they become very rote. But I was trying to really hear it. And I was thinking, by regular attendance in the class in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, it's so important in our spiritual life to have a service, something that we feel like I'm contributing to something bigger than myself, something I look forward to when I wake up in the morning.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's an internal service, like, you know, the idea of genuine self-care, where we're going to listen every day. We're going to chant or meditate every day. We're going to study every day. But there's nice to be part where part of my life is to contribute to something greater than myself. I you know, having the podcast and doing the podcast, I get to feel like this is a great chance for me to offer something back.
Mhm.
I think it's a big thing of like keeping me like happy in bhakti, having a mission, something like that, and that's connected to spirit. And I think for Mara feels the same way, right, Mara? You sort of,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, you sort of like, yeah, and little do you know, but we're showing up on a regular basis, and whether we like it or not, it's going to affect the consciousness. And I think that really helped me as a monk. It's hard to be a monk, you know. It's hard to be a monk just monking out there all the time, doing your monkly duties. But I think after a while, when I started the band, it was a good thing for me to do as a monk that kept me around and happy and focused. We need some spiritual activity in our life to offer back.
Yeah, and in the context of the verse that you quoted, it's not only that you're giving back, but you're giving back to a person. You know, it's like you're serving another person. That also, I think that aspect of it is dynamic.
Meaning, you meaning service to the pure devotee?
You were mentioning service to the pure devotee, right? That when one serves a great soul, when in your heart you kind of really respect and treasure someone,
Yeah.
and with humility you say, I want to serve you. You know, I want to take my energy and invest it in what you've brought to this world. You know, there's something very dynamic about that, and it's so dynamic that it's going to tie right in. Or you don't even know what. Like I said yesterday, you are like an instrument in the hands of God. I don't, you know, Bridge may or may not believe it, but I see it every day.
It's here. It's real.
Because what you're saying right now will tie into something that we'll be discussing, I think, in this very next verse.
Well, before we jump in that, I just also want to give a shout out to the Bhakti recovery group, 12-step recovery group, because that's a huge part of recovery. Is not that I'm just recovering and the group has like saved me, but I'm giving back, and this concept of service and offering back. And when I was going through the 6 pillars with Rich Roll the other day on the podcast, he was just saying, man, this is like everything you're saying in Bhakti. That's like the 12-step program, which he went through recovery for. So it goes hand in hand. By the way, that podcast is airing on Thursday.
This Thursday, tomorrow.
This Thursday. Yeah, that's tomorrow.
Oh man.
So let's
do you have any
share it.
photograsts of the two of you like hanging out there in the studio?
I do.
We'll send them over.
I'll send them over.
Yeah, send them over. I'll make some image for Instagram and all that.
Yeah. All right, cool. All right, so let's get into this verse, Prabhu.
All right. We are in
Canto 3.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, entitled
Vidura's Talks with Maitreya Muni.
Text number. Can Raghu get it? Can he get it?
16.
No.
15.
Nope.
14.
Yes.
14.
Oh,
sage, persons who, because of their... I don't like this already. Going right back to your Roman Catholic days, Fabio. Persons who, because of their sinful activities, are adverse to the topics of transcendence. Due to their sinful activities, they are adverse to the topics of transcendence.
We got to discuss that, but
we're going to dissect and tease this whole thing out. Okay. And thus, ignorant of the purpose of the Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, are pitied by the pitiable.
Oh.
I also pity the fool. No, I also pity them because I see how their duration of life is spoiled by eternal time, while they involve themselves in presentations of philosophical speculation, theoretical ultimate goals of life, in different modes of ritual. Wow, this is a fairly cool verse.
Yeah, well, there is a lot of heavy language in there, though, right?
Well, I think just like Fabio was saying, a lot of us, we can't hear that word sinful activities because it's so loaded. But I just like to say activities which are off base, which are not unnatural. So activities which keep us more in bondage. Sure. I think sometimes these Prabhupada or the Sanskrit scholars, they sometimes we try to find a meaning. It's hard to. There are Sanskrit untranslatables as well, but in the bigger picture, these activities that keep us in illusion, that keep us bound to the body as the self.
Yeah.
This is what
are activities that bring forward a negative reaction, right? Bad karma,
sadness. They bring forth. I mean, quote sinful activities, whatever you want to call it. They bring forth sadness in you and the people you're affecting by your activities. So whatever you want to call it, this translation is a sin. What is the Sanskrit? Papam?
Probably papam. Let's take a look. Pitiable. Oh, I want to talk about the word pity too, because that's kind of a strong term. All those pitiable, pity, ignorant, pity.
Pity.
TK, time. I don't see the word that's being translated that way.
Okay.
I pity. Topics of a verse. Oh, there it is. Aghena. Yeah.
What does that mean?
I don't know, but I think like Agasura may be related to that. It's Agha means I see translated Aghena. I see translated as by the sin or by sinful activities, or Sva Aghena by one's own sinful activities. So it seems like it's something like Papam. I'm sure there's probably some subtle difference.
Okay.
But even like when we say like pity, like when we use that term, what the term really means and like how it's become used in like the modern uses of it, it's usually insulting, right?
I pity the fool.
I pity the fool, or that's just pitiful, like you said, with almost like disgust, like
right.
That's right. But here, I think we should understand like these sages like Maitreya and Vidura, when they're saying it really means like compassion, right? Pity is actually, Mara, maybe you could look that up for us. Pity.
Words sometimes take on new meanings.
Yeah.
By the decade.
Yeah.
The feeling of sorrow and compassion caused by the suffering and misfortune of others.
Right. So
that's a whole different meaning.
Yeah, that's what Prabhupada is saying. That's when Prabhupada's translating. Prabhupada's thinking of the word pity like that. So it's like, yeah, I have compassion for them. Or even, they're when it says they're pitied by the pitiable, right? It means that even people that are, their position is so unfortunate that one really feels for them. Even people whose position is unfortunate feel for them, right?
So the big question here is persons who, because of their wrong, poor choices, etc.,
Yeah.
they are adverse to topics of transcendence.
What? So
So
so in a saying that that person is pitied even by the pity, but by those that are pitied. So it's saying that to not have the desire, or to become adverse to hearing about transcendence, it's like, even if you're in a really bad situation, if you start to develop a desire to hear about transcendence, you're actually in a really good situation.
right.
But if materially, even like say you're in a very good situation, if you have no desire, if you've lost all interest in topics of transcendence, you're just in the worst situation. You're pitied even by the pitiable, right?
Now,
Yeah.
it's almost worth discussing perhaps what type of activities would make a person averse to topics of transcendence. Is it
Well, yeah. Go
I don't
ahead.
know. No, nothing.
Well,
I got nothing.
yeah. Well, one thing is, let's start here. And I mean, obviously, like you were saying, like, you see, it's like this: is if we want to understand karma, this law of karma, it's a very interesting law, right? Here's the idea, and we've discussed this also in the past, that if this world is like a big virtual reality, then the law of karma is like, it's like a computer program that was downloaded into that virtual reality that's going to bring a certain effect into it, right? I don't know so much about computers and that kind of thing, but I'm sure there's programs that you can buy and then you load them in, just like you load an app in or something like that. But it's going to it's going to affect that virtual reality. It's going to create a new law coded into that virtual reality. So the law of karma, the way that the code, what that coding is that we all have a nature, a true nature, right?
Mm.
The nature of the soul that we all share. And ultimately, that's like, by nature, we are lovers of God and servants of God, and through that, servants of all. So really, like, we're these loving, compassionate servants, right? That's who we are, what we're made of, what we're made for. And and with that comes certain qualities, right? Compassion, kindness, sensitivity to others, generosity, etc. And then on the flip side of that would be the opposite qualities, right? Callousness, cruelty, miserliness, etc., etc.
Mm.
So the way that this programming, this program that's been downloaded into the world that we're moving through, the law of karma, the way that what it does is, when we behave in a way that is consistent with our nature, when we behave with compassion, when we behave with kindness, when we behave with generosity, etc., the virtual reality moves in such a way to grant one pleasurable experiences. So it's almost like rewarding us for behaving in a way that's harmonious, moving in the right direction with our true nature. And when we behave in a way that's counter to that, again, callous, cruel, miserly, etc., then the law is going to punish. It's going to create some kind of discomfort, or some kind of problematic situations, something unpleasurable. In a nutshell, that's kind of how karma works, right?
You know where I was going to go with this, right?
No
With
idea where
like
you.
active, I was going to go to like offensive behavior, critical fault finding behavior of other devotees
Mm-hmm.
or of spiritual practitioners or of people in general, just like uh, 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 just cruel speech and behavior, not seeing the person as also part of God,
Yeah.
and just like just like we've created, especially recently, or whether we've created it or algorithms created, we've created cultures of hate now,
Yeah.
and it shuts down our spiritual life. And so I think that, and that's one of the big offenses of bhakti, is to condemn people or what do we call it? Offend.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, and that goes for every living being, right? Like the Bhakti-yogi, they've embraced a mindset of simplicity and kindness, and so that kindness is because they're recognizing the soul in every living being, you with a certain affection. Naturally, they're kind as they move through the world, but even more so, like it's stressed. It's stressed that the Bhakti-yogi is like kind to every living being, but it also stresses like the particular value they put on great souls, right? Because these great souls, the great yogis, great bhakti yogis, great devotees, they're kind of like walking embodiments of all that's like, I guess if we're going to go back to like the Christian language, all that's holy in a sense, right? Like all that's pure and good and admirable, that all becomes embodied in a person. And so when we respect that person, it really means that we're respecting all that's good in life, and we're respecting that model of what we're meant to aspire towards, and ultimately respecting God, right? Because it's the reflection of those pure qualities of God that are existing in that body, in that embodiment of the person. So all of this, like how we relate to every living being, is very important, and it becomes even magnified when we're relating to one of these great souls. And yeah, go ahead.
But I was going to go on with that, but keep going. Finish that up,
Well,
please.
where I was gonna kind of like take that in a fresh direction. So if you wanna,
Well, I was just finishing that verse. The other problem with those, averse activities or those problematic activities, it shortens your duration of life. And then the people are sucked into philosophical speculation, theoretical,
yeah.
ultimate goals of life, different
Right.
modes of ritual, like ritual. Just like people say, well, I'm not into the rituals or the dogma of religion. American culture has its own silly rituals, their own silly deities that we worship, that we do on a regular basis.
Well, so it's interesting, right? So it's saying here that, like, according to how you behave, according to how you treat people, there's a direct link between that and where your interest goes in life. Like what your mind will become attracted to hearing about, right? And so here it's saying that if you're performing bad karma, that that a horrible thing happens, and you're gonna say, "What? Do I get leprosy? Do do I lose all my money? What happens that's so bad?" It's not only pitiable, but it's pitied by the pitiable, right? It's like it's that bad. And what it is that you lose an interest in topics of transcendence. It's like, oh, now you're in a really, really dark place. Like that's what Bhagavatam is saying. Like now we're in really bad shape, right? If you lost all your money, that's okay. If you got leprosy, that's okay. But if you've lost an interest in hearing about transcendence, you're in really bad shape. Like you're in a really dark place, right? And so and it's saying, well, where does that go? Like, what do you become interested in? And it's listing two things here, and these two things are it's within the Vedic paradigm, within the Vedic perspective, that these two things come up. To us, these don't necessarily sound so bad, but like, what do you become interested in? Like some kind of dark, porn or violence or
rituals.
yeah. What is it that you get interested in? And what it's saying here, when it says philosophical speculation about the theoretical ultimate goals in life, that's called jnana, right? And here that term jnana is meaning like I've got caught up in an impersonal conception of the absolute, and it's not going to lead me to happiness.
See,
Right?
I didn't even take it like that. I
No,
just
this
thought
is
people have
jnana
their
and
own.
karma.
No, but I just took it. I know, but I'm saying I took it as people just get caught up in their own speculation of what life is about and the goal of life. And of course, it always gets thwarted because it's generally a material idea of, well, I collect this or just trying to have a good time. And then all of a sudden my body doesn't work any longer.
The word here used is vada. Okay. And again, I'm no Sanskrit expert. We really got to get like a steady Sanskrit expert like on the show, right? We need someone to go to.
We just pull out. We just pull out every now and then. Okay, come on, tell us.
Yeah, but my understanding is the word vada it's like ism, right? Like we say Maya Vada or Tattva Vada or Veda Vada.
Okay.
You know, it means like ism. And so it means they get caught up in all the isms, right, in the world, you know, and different philosophical speculation here, you know, literally says of the gati, of what's the ultimate goal, and then the next thing that it mentions is smriti nam, and that's translated as following different rituals. But the Bhagavatam is throughout, steadily, constantly sewn, threaded throughout. The Bhagavatam is always this comparison of bhakti in comparison to jnana and karma. And those, both the words jnana and karma used in so many different ways. So to make it just real brief, it's saying that some people look at this world and think, I want to enjoy the things of this world. It's entirely materialistic, but it can be done with piety. And the Vedas teach about that, especially 4 Vedas. And then jnana is the idea like, no, the material things in life bring you suffering. You should renounce them, leave them behind, and try to achieve liberation, freedom from all that suffering. But what the Bhakti-yogi says, there's actually the Atma supersidity, the complete satisfaction. The soul isn't found in either of those two. They're both kind of self-interested, and you're not really tapping into your true nature until you become selfless. And that's found in divine love or bhakti. So for the Bhakti-yogi, even those pious activities of karma and jnana are seen as like dark places that are steering me away from my true nature. You know,
It's tying us back.
That's how I see it, right?
Tying us back into the whole thing, Kaustubha. It's bring full circle now. So now, what is my contribution to the greater whole? Which takes us right off of I, me, and mine, and what can I give in return?
Yeah.
I have so much. I feel so blessed. I am so fortunate. What can I give back? How can I see my workplace or my life or my lifestyle or my resources or my thoughts or my talents? How can I contribute back?
I could say, well, here's one clue, right? Because when I heard this verse, and again, the topic being that according to your behavior or negative behavior or bad karma, you get this really horrible thing happens, right? Is that you lose interest in transcendence. Now you're really rudderless in the universe, right?
I've felt that rudderlessness
in
the universe. It's a lousy way to feel.
Okay.
Right?
It is.
It's like, what the hell am I doing?
So that brings me to the beginning of the Bhagavatam, where Sutta Goswami begins to speak. He makes a couple interesting statements in this. You know, he begins to speak in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto. And one of the verses that he says, we mentioned yesterday, is a tongue twister, right? Well, but even before I get to that one.
Pontius Pilate performed pitiable. Anyway, I'm working on with pitiable. Okay. Pontius Pilate performed pitiable. Okay, anyway, go on.
So, but there are 2 verses in the, I'll read the one that we spoke about yesterday, which was the tongue twister. You ready?
Yeah.
Because when I asked you to say it, you see, you did it in such a way where you went right around like the difficulty.
I Americanized it.
Well, I do it too. Like almost everyone that quotes this verse, I said you go shru shru shro shrodadanyasya, but it's like
right,
no.
Hit me with it.
That's like how Scooby Doo would say it or something. Shru shru shro shrodadanyasya.
Sort of my Sanskrit is a little Scooby Doo-ish. He was my Sanskrit teacher.
But it's shu shru sho shrodadanyasya Vasudeva Kata Ruchi. So Vasudeva Kata, our Sanskrit takeaway from yesterday was Krishna Kata.
Krishna Kata, yes.
Vasudeva Kata means the same thing. Vasudeva is another name for Krishna. So Vasudeva Kata Ruchi. Ruchi means taste.
That's right? A great word.
An interest. Yeah, got some, but like it means like an interest, but it's a flavorful way of saying interest, right? It's like a taste. Like I want more of that. So shru shru shro. See, I just did it. Shu shru sho shradadhanyasya. Shradadhanyasya. Shrada means faith. So so it means that one who takes this up takes up what up with great faith and great care and attention. Mahat Sevya Vipra, that when one serves the great souls, right? You're saying, where does my contribution go? And I'm saying, when I hear this verse, when I heard the verse we read today about how one loses interest in hearing Vasudeva Katha, in hearing about transcendence, this is a verse that talks about how you gain interest in Vasudeva Katha. So it says, "O twice-born sages, Sutta Goswami sitting in the forest in Naimisharanya, speaking to all these sages, right? Who asked him, what leads to Atma supersidity? What brings the greatest benefit to mankind, to all humankind?" He says, "O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed of all vice, great service is done. By such service, what's the result? Do you get a lot of money? Do you get cured of leprosy? No. You gain an affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva, right?
The
you
opposite,
yeah.
opposite of the adverse things you become attracted to.
You get a taste for hearing about transcendence. You get it's specifically here it's saying that you get a taste for hearing about Krishna.
By the way, a lot of the listeners have a set of Srimad Bhagavatams that we study. You're in good standing in your spiritual life when you look at that set of Bhagavatams and think, wow, this is so valuable. Wow, this is like an altar. Wow, this is incredible. There may be a very sad time in your life when you're thinking, these books are taking up too much space in my apartment. That's a problem. It's like there's something that happens when we become offensive in consciousness, that everything that is actually valuable, we look at it as not valuable.
That's the pitiable by pitied by the pitiable. Yeah, exactly.
And and it can come. It's come to me. I've had heavy reversals in my spiritual life. I'm not proud to say, it's humiliating to say, but the things that are actually valuable, all of a sudden you see this is not valuable, and it's like almost like the mind becomes possessed by I don't know, misled materialism, or covered by illusion.
Yeah.
And so we always want to keep that, that very strong and humble desire to worship and respect and love that which is worshipable.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that is worthy of worship, worthy of love.
It's such a powerful, this is something really worth discussing. This is something that's like in the Nectar Devotion and the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of, by the great sage Rupa Goswami. It was translated by the sage for the modern age, Srila Prabhupada, in a book called the Nectar Devotion. And there it talks about like how bad karma works, right? And it's used in the same terms like sin, with papam and all that. But we can think of it in terms of bad. It says it all starts with ignorance or avidya, right? We don't know what is what. And so we act in ways that are against our true nature, right? And that's called bijam. Like you get because of our ignorance, there's a seed of desire to act against our nature, right? As we move through the material world. And that leads to papam or the activity itself, right? Like that bad karmic activity. And that leads to the negative karma, which comes in two varieties, unmanifest and manifest, right?
Parabdha and aparabdha.
That's right, parabdha and aparabdha. So unmanifest, it means I've acted in such a way that I got a bad reaction coming my way.
It's so interesting to think, like there are seeds sort of planted inside of us that have not grown yet. And then something horrible happens, and that's the unmanifest karma growing. And it's from some activity that happened way back historically, last year, last lifetime, but now it's manifest. You're like, why is this happening? Well, it's been sitting there in a seed form waiting to manifest.
That's right.
Interesting to think of it like that, because we think everything that's happening, well, it's just happening because that's just what today is. No, you planted that seed of misfortune maybe years ago, maybe lifetimes ago, and then it becomes manifest. Aparabdha karma.
Yeah, aparabdha unmanifest, and then parabdha karma it manifests.
These
right?
would be great in our tongue twisters, by the way. Pontius Pilate
Parabdha,
performed aparabdha karma. Pontius Pilate performed aparabdha. Okay, go on. I'll work on this one.
Performed papam.
Pontius Pilate performed
And then
papam.
perceived his aparabdha karma when it became parabdha. Something
let's
like
play
that.
Mara, see what you got for this.
All right. So okay. So again, it starts with avidya or ignorance. It leads to activities in ignorance that lead
Bad
to
choices.
bad choices, bad actions. And then those bad actions, they lead to first unmanifested karma. Sometimes it comes instant, right? So it comes quick.
Right.
But usually it's waiting sometimes. By the way, which is another very important point, is what?
And it's another great thing to YouTube search. Instant karmas.
Oh,
There's
okay.
incredible compilations of
I
those.
bet there is.
Okay, go on.
And so what was I going to say? Oh yeah. So another really important thing, because a lot of people are adverse to the idea of the law of karma because they feel that if we accept that, then it means that people that are like living materially fortunately are necessarily better people that are like, living in materially unfortunately, right?
Sure.
And that could lead to oppression. But really, everyone has to understand, even if I'm materially more fortunate than you right now, we don't know what kind of stock of aparabdha karma I got just sitting there.
And sometimes aparabdha stuff manifests to people who have everything.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden this guy has everything and something very horrible happens.
Yeah. And so the way the yogis look at it is we're all just going through fortune and misfortune. That's what this world is all about. I don't think I'm better than you because I'm more fortunate right now. And, it's just we're all going through cycles of fortune and misfortune until we reconnect. But this is the really interesting point that I wanted to get to. So we described this cycle of karma that begins with ignorance, right? And the seed of desire to act opposite of my true nature, whether it's callous or cruel or miserly or whatever it may be, that leads to an action. And that action leads to unmanifested and then manifested karma. And that leads to suffering. And in one sense, that's like a full chain. End of story. But at the same time, there's another aspect of bad karma that comes from it. And the word is kutam. The idea is that not only do you get, like, say I hit someone over the head with a baseball bat, and then it comes around and it's unmanifested for some time. I'm walking around just like as a time bomb waiting to get hit in the head with a baseball bat, and then at some point I get hit in the head with a baseball bat and I suffer, and that's in one sense okay, end of the chain of karma. Yep, right? No, because there's another negative reaction that comes from that, and that's called kutam, which means your mind becomes predisposed. It becomes shaped in such a way to again repeat that activity.
Well, this is why they have things like repeat offenders in prison. The repeat offenders are much more, problematic because they've gone there before. There is the idea that people who have done these things before, it's no problem for them to do it again. Just like if there's a dog, a lot of dogs bite, but very rarely does a dog bite and puncture the skin. If they puncture the skin, that's a problem. That's a problem dog. Dogs will nip or they'll snap.
You mean
at
just
you.
like when it's playing or when it's like...
No, when they actually take a bite and puncture your skin, that's a problem.
But not if it's protecting you, then it's a good thing, right?
You're ruining my analogy.
Okay, I'm sorry. Bad dog. Okay, you see, you're
dog.
anti-dog. You see, I'm
dog.
telling you, that's a problem dog. It's a good dog if it's taking care of you.
The point, for example, let's get the dogs out of the equation because you think I don't like dogs. Suppose I've never taken drugs, and
except you revealed one time you did, Robert. That's out there.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's a whole other story.
Okay.
I've never taken, for the most part, I've never taken drugs. And if someone would say, hey, Raghunath, do you want some cocaine? I'll be like, no. Now, if I had taken drugs 30 years ago and I liked those drugs, and someone offered me cocaine today, even though I hadn't taken them in 30 years,
Yeah.
I might think about it. I might, even though I might say no, I might think about it, because that kutam, it's been planted in the desires.
There you go.
That's why it's always best if we just never go to dark places. And even if we're recovered or going through recovered or rehab, the fact that we've had those kutams, those seeds planted in us, it's sort of like, oh, maybe. Sort of
Even if we suffered because of it.
Even if we suffered, we've lost everything, we think maybe. That's why a great thing about recovery is and also our bhakti path is we try to draw lines in sand and say no more, never again. We should wake up, and if we struggle with those things, we should wake up. Krishna, please, never again. I'm never going here again. We just really try to firmly draw those lines in the sand of what I will and will not do, because to the degree that we do them, they keep us connected to that past life deeper and deeper, and they plant more seeds. Like, it's not such a big deal that I took those. It is a big deal.
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's called the you get that papam disposition, right? You get your mind becomes shaped, and naturally you get this disposition towards living contrary to my true nature. That's actually worse than getting hit on the head with the baseball bat, right? Because once that's done, it's done. But that other aspect of the negative karma is that my mind develops this disposition that goes right back to the beginning of the cycle of the bijam, the seed for the next activity. And then you're stuck in that cycle. You're going around, and it's becoming reinforced each time. Not only are you getting the negative, the upper rubda turns into parabda, you suffer the consequence, but also you're deepening that disposition that's like directly opposite of your true nature. And so that's what we're reading about. And how unfortunate one would be if through that type of cycle, they've hardened themselves to hearing really what's the highest nectar in life. What is that like? In Sanskrit and in Ayurveda, there's this word rasayanam, right? This kind of like elixir, this kind of like, but
what
it's
are you,
like
French? Elixir, monsieur? Would you like an elixir?
but it's like, it's delicious and it's powerful and it's a panacea and it's the cure to all our ills. Hearing about transcendence, that really is the most fortunate situation. That's what breaks the cycle. So really, it's kind of like if you want to do a litmus test, or say like take someone's pulse, take your own pulse. In terms of where am I at spiritually? Where am I at in my journey through this dark material world? Well, if that desire to hear about transcendence, if that taste, that ruchi, that vasudeva kata ruchi is in you, that I want to hear Bhagavatam, I want to hear Bhagavad Gita, that's where my mind wants to go. That means your health is really becoming restored. You're really, you're like we say, the opposite is pitied by the pitiable. Now you are like considered like fortunate even by the fortunate, right?
When you have that vasudeva kata ruchi inside you.
Yeah. Exactly. And if you take your pulse and it's the opposite, oh, maybe I don't want to hear that. Maybe I don't want to wake up for wisdom of the sage this morning.
Yep.
Maybe I don't want to read Bhagavatam. Maybe I don't want to associate with people that are uplifting. Maybe I want to associate with other people, because we talk about different things and so on, do different things. That means we're heading in the other. Our health is weak at that point, and we're becoming pitied by the pitiable.
Need to do some spiritual push-ups.
That's right.
Hey, Kaustubha, Ranger Jake, who's a big contributor to this message board, including some
I haven't
very
even glanced
good
at the message board today, but I see there's 24 messages that I haven't even seen yet. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, including some good tongue twisters. He brought up this very interesting point here. Where'd it go? I can't even find it now. But how do you? Oh man, where is it?
You dropped the ball.
I'm gonna blame Ranger Jake for it. Anyway, I've lost it. But it was sort of like this parabda karma. How do you deal with your manifest karma? And that's also answered in the nectar of devotion when we talk about that. You got this manifest karma. You're stuck with some very, very bad karma you're dealing with. And the answer is bhakti. Bhakti immediately frees you from. There's no way to deal with bad karma in one sense. except through bhakti, because it puts you on. I can't remember what the Nectar Devotion explicitly says, but it takes you right out of your body.
You see, there's a real important point that's shared there, and that is that.
He writes, how to demolish manifested karma. That's what his question was.
Right. And so you see, there's two ways you can go about that. Now, one way that's informed by the Vedic literature is that, and this is similar to the idea of like in Catholicism where you have like your sins forgiven through confession, right? The idea is that through ritual, one can counteract the bad effect that one's going to get, right? If I'm if I have some unmanifested karma that's due to become manifested at some point in time, and I'm worried about it because I know I've done things that are going to bring bad karma, then there are rituals that you can perform, which will counteract that. But what the Bhagavatam, and this is all going to come up later, really very clearly illustrates, is that even that may work. The fact is, it's something like when you go and you're weeding a garden, and you pull out the weed, but you don't get down to the root. And the weed just springs right back up, right? Yeah. So the wise people, the true sages say that's not a way to live, to perform foolish activity that's against my nature and try to counteract the negative reactions through ritual and so on. The wise person says, I want to burn those weeds right to the root. I want to rip them out right down to the root. And how is that done? It's done through Bhakti-yoga. It's done through entirely embracing one's true nature, which is the servant of the servant of the servant, ultimately of Sri Krishna, right? Because bhakti is not only in the right direction, it is our true nature. We're acting in our true nature when we perform bhakti.
That was a good class. Manifested, unmanifested karma, sinful desires, getting beat up by the nuns. This is Fabio and the Italians. What else do we highlight? Pontius Pilate. What else do we talk about today?
Codes of karma, serving the great souls, singing in the streets.
Singing in the streets,
Bhakti-yogi
dancing
dogs.
in the streets with your hands in the air, aloof to public opinion. This is powerful stuff. We have a Bhakti recovery meeting today. Let's see. What time is that?
At 1.
At 1. I'm teaching yoga at 7 if you want to join us at supersoulyoga.com. And a bunch of people joined late in the show. Eva, Urugaya, and Damodar Priya. There's a bunch of other faces here. They joined early and left early. What? Kristen's iPhone. Hannah Brinkhouse. AJ Sullivan. A couple dogs joined. Liam Wilson. Good to see everybody today. It is a beautiful day for a beautiful day, people. Let's all dance.